Good morning, jr5. How are you today? Let's complete the lesson 1, which is called the friction. In the last video, we talked about the friction between the solid objects. And you know that there are three types of friction. Number 1, friction between solid objects, and friction between solid objects and air, and friction between solid objects and water. Now we will talk about the friction between the solid objects and air. Solid objects and air. Before studying this type of friction, we must know what does it mean by the friction between solid and air. What does it mean by friction between solid objects and air? When the solid objects move in the air, any solid objects move in the air, the friction force arises between this object and air. Okay? This type of friction called air resistance. Called what? Air resistance. And it acts in the opposite direction of the body movement or of the motion of the body. So when any solid objects moves in the air, there are type of friction force arises between these objects and air. This type called air resistance. Called air resistance because these objects moved in the air. And it acts in the opposite direction of the body movement, like the friction force. So what does it mean by the air resistance? Air resistance means, or the definition of the air resistance, it's a type of friction force. It's a type of friction force resulting from the movement of an object, any movement of any object through air. So the air resistance means what? Type of friction force. It's a type of friction force resulting from what? From movement of object through air. Okay? Now we will talk about like the factors affecting the friction force in the air resistance. We will talk about the factors affecting the air resistance. Okay, remember me. What are the factors affecting the friction force? I said there are 3 factors affecting the friction force. Okay? Number 1, type of surface material. Number 2, speed of the body. Number 3, the surface area. Okay? But the factors affecting the air resistance, there is no type of surface material. Okay? Because this object moves in the air. So there is no touch between any 2 solid objects. So the factors affecting the air resistance, they are 2 factors only. The speed of the body and the surface area of the moving body. The speed of the body, and the speed means velocity. Speed means velocity of the moving body and the surface area of the moving body. Let's start with factor number 1, which is called the speed or the velocity of the moving body. There are a direct relation between the speed of the body and the air resistance. Why? Because by increasing the speed of the body that moves through air, the air resistance increases, and vice versa. Like when you run fast in open air. When you run fast, so you face more air. You face more air. There are more air face you or touch your face. So by increasing your speed, the air resistance increases. And by decreasing the speed, if you move but in low speed, so the air resistance decreases. Okay? You don't feel much or more air face your face. So the relation between the speed and the body, the speed of the body and the air resistance is direct relation. And also I remember you, what does it mean by direct relation? Means by increasing the speed, the air resistance increases. Like we have some examples that show the speed of the moving body, like when you run fast in open air, like this boy. When the boy move in high speed, okay, so the air resistance increases. And like when you ride a bike, when you ride a bicycle or ride a bike at high speed, so you feel more air in face you. And when the car moves at high speed, also the air resistance increases. Okay? Factor number two, the surface area of the moving body. What does it mean by the surface area of the moving body? Means by increasing the surface area of the moving body that moves through air, there are more, or the air resistance increases. So there is a direct relation between the surface area and the air resistance. Because by increasing the surface area, the air resistance increases. And by decreasing the surface area, the air resistance decreases. Okay? So there is a direct relation between the speed of the moving body and the air resistance, and the surface area of the moving body and the air resistance. Like number one, or there are some examples that show the surface area of the moving body. Number one, the trains, the rockets, the new cars, and the aircrafts. All these means of transportation, they are designed in a streamlined shape. What does it mean by streamlined shape? Like this train. It's a modern train. This is modern train, or this plane. They are designed in a streamlined shape, like this. Okay? They are modern transportation, means of transportation. But the old, like this car, what is the difference between this and this? The yellow car, it's the modern car, but this is the cyan car, it's the old car. In the modern car are designed in streamlined shape. Why? To decrease the air resistance. Because by decreasing the surface area of the moving body, the air resistance increase. The air resistance decrease. So its speed increase. So the modern means of transportations designed in streamlined shapes to decrease the air resistance. So its speed increases. Number two, like the birds. All the birds have a streamlined shape, like this bird. Its beak. Beak has a streamlined shape. Why? To decrease the air resistance. To decrease the surface area, so the air resistance decrease, so its speed increases. Okay? Number three, the parachutes. Parachutes open the parachute to land safely. Why? When the parachute land, it opens the parachute. Why? To increase the air resistance by increasing its surface area. Increase the surface area, so the air resistance increase, so the falling or landing speed decreases, so it lands safely. Okay? Number four, the birds or bats. Birds or bats stretch their wings on landing. Why? To increase the air resistance by increasing its surface area. To increase the surface area, so increase the air resistance, so falling or landing speed decrease, so land safely. Okay? Now we will talk about the type number 3. It's the last type of the friction force, the friction between solid objects and water. Solid objects and water. Also, before studying this type of friction, we must know what does it mean by the friction between solid objects and water. It means that when any solid object moves through water, like fish, like ship, the friction arises. There is a type of friction force called water resistance arises between these objects and water. This type called what? Called water resistance. And also the water resistance acts in the opposite direction of the movement of the body, or of the motion of the body. So what does it mean by the water resistance? Water resistance means it's the type of friction force resulting from the movement of the object through water. So, the type of friction force resulting from movement of any object through water called water resistance. But the type of friction force resulting from movement of the object through air called air resistance. So when the object moves through air, so this type of friction called air resistance, but any solid object moves through water, so this type of friction force called water resistance. Also, the factors that affect the water resistance, like the factors that affect the air resistance, the same factors. Number 1, the speed of the moving body and the surface area of the moving body. The speed or the velocity of the moving body and the surface area of the moving body, and also these two factors, there are direct relation between them and the water resistance. Let's start with number 1, the speed or the velocity of the moving body. Also, by increasing the speed of the body that moves through water, by increasing the speed of the fish, when the fish moves in high speed, so the water resistance increases. So there is a direct relation between them. And number 2, the surface area of the moving body. Also, there is a direct relation between the surface area of the moving body and the water resistance. Because by increasing the surface area, the water resistance increases. By increasing the surface area of the body that moves through water, the water resistance increases, and vice versa. So there is a direct relation between them. We have some examples, also 2 examples about the surface area, like fish or dolphin. Look at this picture, the fish, this is fish. The fish or dolphins have streamlined shapes. Like the modern means of transportation have streamlined shapes. Why the fish? All the fish look like this shape. Why? To decrease the surface area. That moves through water. So the water resistance decreases. And number 2, the ships also are designed in streamlined shape. All the ships designed in like this shape, in a streamlined shape. Why? To decrease the surface area, so the water resistance decrease. Okay? So again, let's recap from the beginning. The factors affecting the friction between solid and air, or the air resistance, also the factors affecting the water resistance. The speed of the moving body and the surface area. The speed of the moving body and the surface area, and there are a direct relation between them and air resistance and water resistance. But you have keep in your mind the examples in the air resistance, like this. These examples, it's very important. Why all means of transportations, trains or rockets or new cars, are designed in a streamlined shape. Why? To decrease the surface area, so decrease the air resistance, so its speed increase. And the birds also have streamlined shape, also to decrease the surface area. And the parachute or birds stretch their wings to increase. Here he wants to increase the surface area to increase the air resistance, so falling or landing speed decrease, so land safely. And the types of, or the factors affecting the water resistance, also the speed and the surface area. By increasing the speed, the water resistance increase, and by increasing the surface area, the water resistance also increase. Like the fish or dolphins also have a streamlined shape. Why? To decrease the surface area. To decrease surface area, so decrease the water resistance. And the ships are designed in streamlined shapes to decrease the surface area, so decrease the water resistance. Okay, thank you, Junior 5. Goodbye.